Hi, I'm Sandy Petersen, and this is my mother, Bernice Petersen. And I had an interview a while ago where I was talking about my dad, who is this crazy guy who was reading science fiction in the 1940s and did all these things. And I thought we would have an interview with a person who not only had to be stuck with my dad for all those years, but also had to raise a crazy guy like me with my interests, my bizarre interests and strange talents. So one of the features of the talk with my dad was I asked him what his most important decision was, and he hemmed and hawed, and he finally said that it was...
Well, I decided when I was in high school I'd be a doctor, so I went to college on that plan.
And he made an error in doing that because he got an earful about what his most important decision was. And
yes, because every other time he always said the most important decision he ever made was marrying me.
So he has heard from that. So anyone that's concerned about that, he has heard from that a dozen times or more since that interview. So what we thought we'd do with this, instead of me grilling my mom with hard questions, she has put together a bunch of stories about what Sandy Petersen, a professional game designer, was like when he was a kid. And I think these are in chronological order, but I don't know for sure. So why don't you tell us some of these tales?
Well, at first, I have a small voice, sorry. I always think I'm yelling. When he was 3 or 4 months old, he was a chubby child. And I would cross my knees like this and put him on the top foot and rock him up and down. And that was his hobby horse, because that was fun for both of us.
I was doing that to my 3-year-old granddaughter last night.
And what happened?
She loved it. It was the best thing ever.
Yes. Okay.
She probably weighed less than me, though.
When Sandy was about 20 months or 2 years old, he had a little neighbor girl that came over to play with him every now and then. But
is that Shelley?
2 years old. No, she just lived across the hall at the nursing home. And so he got bored with that, but we had a little cat, a little orange cat. And when it was a baby, he decided to wash it in the toilet. But fortunately, we caught him. So he's a clean person. There's some fixing ups to do in this nursing home. It was a carriage house that we lived in on the top floor, and they were fixing the 2 bottom levels for apartments. And in doing so, they disturbed a huge nest of rodents. And Sandy came running in, and they left big holes around.
We did not live in the best district of St. Louis.
Yes, we did. We lived in a very good district.
Okay. Well, we had rats and
just
roaches.
An old building,
okay.
You know. So they had big openings around the pipes that go up to the roof. And the rats would climb on the outside of the pipes and race through the room, and Sandy was chasing after us, yelling, "Squirrel, squirrel!"
I do remember my mom telling me that once I said, "Squirrel, squirrel!" There was a squirrel in the house, and she came in and it was a rat.
And I said, "Squirrel?" And I saw this rat run across the road, jumped on the pipe, and disappeared downstairs. And I complained to the lady, and she had a guy come up and seal those holes. When Sandy was a little older, about 5, he had a playmate that lived next door. And they would get together and play all morning long. And his name was John Arthur. And John Arthur is the name of our second son. Kept it in the family.
John Arthur once told me that if I picked up a bee by the back, it wouldn't sting me. So I tried it.
You learned a lot from him.
I learned not to do that again.
Yeah, I bet you didn't. Well, when he was 5, he turned 5 on September the 16th. And in St. Louis, if you're not 5 before the 1st of September, you weren't allowed to go to school. So I put him in a Washington U nursery-like school. And so he got to go to school because he was a bright little boy. And the teacher never interviewed me or anything, just toilet habits and stuff like that. And so I never heard from her about his progress until about a month before school was over. And she said, "Why didn't you tell me that he was so interested in dinosaurs?" And he knew so much about it. He knew how to pronounce Stegosaurus and all of those names. And I said, "I don't know, you never asked me." But she was amazed at how much he knew at 5.
I really like dinosaurs.
You still do.
When he had a little girl friend come over, her name was Elizabeth Garrett, and she was a girl from the school. She was like 5, just like him. And he was walking down the driveway, and he was jumping around and being excited and trying to be scary. And she just looked at him. She was so calm, and she said, "Oh, Sandy, you're so funny." That wasn't the thing he was trying to get across. But yeah, luckily he met Wendy. Wendy thought he was scary, so then that made Sandy happy. Now, when Sandy was 10 or 12, he liked to read. And when he took a walk one day from grade school, he walked all the way from Rock Canyon School to Petersen Medical Pharmacy on 1230 North.
Probably about a half mile away.
Yes, at least, if not more. And we couldn't find him. And finally, after being so frantic and getting the police involved in that, just before that, the Petersen Pharmacy called us and apparently had finally wondered what this little boy sitting in front of their bookshelves, who he was. And he told them, and they called us, and so Robert rushed down to gather him up and bring him home. But
well, I liked the pharmacies because they had comic books and other books that were fun to read, and every once in a while my dad would cough up the 12 cents to buy one.
Yes.
Not very often.
No, but before he was even 5, I would go to the corner pharmacy, and he would sit by that bookshelf until I bought him a 25-cent book. And then one day I decided I just couldn't do it every day.
My dad was a poor medical student. 25 cents in 1960 was more than it is now.
Yeah. So anyway, I just said, "No, we can't buy any more books." And he just threw a hissy. But by the time we crossed the street, he was fine. And then he didn't ask every day after that. But we still had some of those books around, but I'm not sure if they got lost in all our moves. But
they were just little golden books,
I remember when Sandy was a teenager and he was going to be lazy and not get up and go to priesthood meeting.
A Mormon thing.
But his good friend David Farnsworth would come over and rattle him until he got up and went. So David was a great friend.
He was a good friend. Also, David is one of the people that I would play tabletop games with. So he was one of the influencers in learning game development and strategy. I still am in contact with David, who lives in Japan now, and we discuss important things like how evil was Imperial Japan in World War II, other topical things like that.
Important issues.
Yes.
When Sandy was that teenager, he had three friends. He had David, he had Chris Spencer, and he had Bill Hamlin, and they made the Evil Four. And they came over and took over the dining room table, which was, I could not touch anything on it because that was the big game table. Did you know that?
Lots of games. Yes, I knew that. I was part of it. I was involved.
You were very involved.
Also, every Halloween, we would get together and we would make what in Utah is called a spook alley, basically a haunted house in our house that people would go through. And just for, well, I'll tell more stories about that on my Friday Facebook thing, but stay tuned for what Sandy thought would make a good spook alley when he was a teenager.
Oh, well, I can tell you about that. Chris Spencer was good at with wires and plugs and stuff.
He was an electronics kind of guy, hi-fi, that kind of thing.
And he would put spooky sounds on the outside on our bridge, sounds that would scare kids before they got to the door, but not intimidate them enough to not come in, because they also had we have a downstairs, and he had to go through the spook alley down there, and those boys just really arranged things very nicely. And we still have on the ceiling of our storeroom the writings of Beware All Who Enter Here.
Yeah.
By Chris.
The house we're in right now, my house growing up, has kind of like a bridge across a moat, not really a moat, but like a lower area. And Chris Spencer arranged speakers down there, or microphones, so that when you spoke there, it would have an echo sound. And you could shout down into the dark gulf and it would echo back like it was a canyon miles deep. So that was fun.
Chris was funny. Well, this expanded so that it included his sisters later, and Anna came, and she was...
Oh, yeah, my aunts.
Dancing with a spooky thing in the living room under a dim light. My sister Mary, who is a year older than me, would sit in a rocking chair by the family room entrance at the bottom of the stairs, and she dressed as a witch, and she would cackle when she could hear somebody coming downstairs. She was really scary.
She still is scary.
Yes. She's not quite as scary. When, well, I can go on and on. You know, Bill Crawford was a teacher, and he was
my 6th grade teacher.
And he had a big fancy thing that encouraged children to fill in all the books that they had read, you know. And I noticed that Sandy had just a smidgen on his name. And I said, how come? And he said, oh, Sandy doesn't need to be encouraged to read. Oh, Bill was a good teacher.
Mention Mrs. Green.
I don't remember Mrs. Green.
She was my 1st grade teacher.
Oh, okay.
You always told me that she would contact you and stuff and say, this Sandy is someone unusual, which I would say is a fair cop.
Yes. Well, that's a good memory. I didn't remember that, but...
You're the one that told me. She didn't tell me I was unusual. She was too good a teacher for that. She told you and Dad that I was unusual.
Yes.
But then you told me, and I was like, huh. Well, so I'm going to go back on Mrs. Green, because she has now remembered Mrs. Green back when my dad was in the Air Force. As an Air Force doctor, he got to be a captain just for being a doctor. Yeah. So Mrs. Green was my teacher then.
Yes, she was a lovely lady, and she did enjoy Sandy, and she did tell me a lot about him, I remember now. And she was very curious to know what he'd become, but...
Because I was so weird.
No, you weren't weird. You were just exciting.
Well, I'm not saying she would say it in a negative way, but she says, there's something unusual about this kid. I wonder what's going to happen to him. I guess she figured... Either.
They all do, yeah. I'm sure that. But you know, you really played it down. And I think when he was in Rock Canyon School, he didn't want kids to be, shouting at him that he was an egghead or he was a nerd, but he was at the same time very exciting to be talking, because he would talk to, he would give lectures at a drop of a pin. And he lectured his grandpa. He lectured other people, kids his own age, kids older than him. He lectured to Eric every single day, and they're 10 years different.
That was my younger brother.
And and Eric would just absorb all that, so he became as nutty as him. So they were two of a kind.
I would stay in from grammar school some days, from recess, to play board games like Clue with other kids. Oh, not every day, but sometimes.
I didn't know that.
Well, the teacher let us, and so we got Clue there. Let's play it.
Yeah. Well, You were a very interesting child, and you grew up to be an even more interesting young man. And I have other stories, but I can't go on forever and ever.
So this is going to be the end. And these are stories about what it was like to have a game designer. I think some of the stories are the kind of stories that anyone would have. And some of the stories are the kind of stories that maybe pick out something about me. So you might be encouraged to hear that you were as weird as me, or discouraged to think, or encouraged to know that you weren't as weird as me. Either way, thank you, Mom.
You're welcome.
And we are signing off.